Thank you for visiting ChristopherMedia.net.
It's the Divisional Round, and you can follow all the action at BetOnline.net. On Saturday, LA visits the frozen tundra of Green Bay, while Baltimore and Buffalo face off with their electric third-year quarterbacks. On Sunday, and after winning their first playoff game in 26 years, Cleveland meets last year's champs. In the late game, two legendary future Hall of Fame QBs square off as Tampa visits the Big Easy. Check out all the action this week at BetOnline.net as teams take one step closer to the championship. Always available online or your mobile device. Visit BetOnline.net today. Bring the game home at BetOnline.net.
Of all the streaming services out there, only one is different. Discovery Plus. It's the greatest collection of real-life entertainment on the planet. 55,000 episodes of food, love, true crime, home, from networks like TLC, HGTV, and tons more. Yes! With stars like Chip and Jo, an exclusive new series from 90 Day Fiancé, all in one place. Bam! Discovery Plus. Stream now. Stream what you love.
Thank you for visiting ChristopherMedia.net.
Welcome to Sporgy, the show that gives you half-ass sports fans giving their half-ass opinions. And now, here are your hosts.
All right. Well, it says this is Sporgy, but this is not Sporgy. It is sort of. It's like a spin-off. I've decided to call it the Fantasy Hack. It's a double entendre. You can use it two ways. And we're going to do this once a week. During fantasy football season, and joining me, one of my fellow podcasters from the Beer Nuts podcast, JR.
Happy to be here.
Oh yeah, I know you're a fantasy nut just like me. How many teams you got this year?
I think somewhere between 9 and 11.
Woo! Yeah, I did 7 last year, and I think 6 is my magic number.
I think I was at 11, and I gave 2 up that my son took over, and now one of the leagues is coerced me back in, so I'm actually at 10 now.
Ooh.
But, hey, it's a great time of year, and what I like to do is I like to draft in a few like free fun leagues before my big money drafts comes, because then if I make mistakes in those, they're not so bad, and by the time I do the big money drafts, I've learned a few things, and you kind of get a feel where guys are going, and so it works out. And, when the season comes, obviously the big money leagues get most of my attention. But
I hear you.
I'm always in it to win it.
I'm a mock drafter. Like, I start the day after the NFL draft. Like, it's the stuff that I'll do. I travel, so I'll do. Got half an hour to kill on the runway. I'll do mock draft. Maybe in the can. But it's so. I hear you. You got to practice. You got to know. Like, I'm to the point now where I could tell you pretty much what team I'm going to get based on what position I get.
Yeah, it just depends with a group of guys or girls that you draft with. When you're in a league with the guys, or again, could be a mixed league too. But when you play with the same players all the time, you kind of get to know their tendencies. There's guys that always draft Dolphins. There's guys that always draft Eagles.
Oh yeah, and then I am actually drafting right now while we're recording this. And yeah,
awesome.
I've been in this league for 10 years. Most of these guys have been in here for 10 years. The guy takes Mahomes second round. What are you doing? I mean, and that's got to be, I'm sure we both see it a lot. That's recency bias, right?
Yeah, there's one in every crowd.
Yeah, and I get it. He scored the most points of any fantasy player last year, but that's not going to happen again.
Well, there's always that guy that takes the 8th round kicker too.
Yeah, if you're listening to us, please, we beseech you, kicker should always be your last pick.
Always.
And it should be right after your defense. I think I've heard something like what was it last year? The big defense was the Jaguars. Everybody wanted to take. Some people are taking it in the round. They should be taking a quarterback. I think I heard something like 3 points separated the best defense from I think the middle of the road or maybe even the worst defense last year as far as all together. So
defenses and kickers are crapshoots. Don't waste a pick early on a defense or a kicker.
No. Well,
I'd rather have my 4th or 5th deep wide receiver picked before I pick any defenses.
Yeah. Well, since we're already talking about drafts, we really wanted to start out with first show. This is a big week for draft. I mean, this is the week for drafts. I like to avoid drafting any time before the last week of preseason because you never know. I mean, look at this last week, right? Week 3, Andrew Luck retires. Lamar Miller goes down. So anybody who drafted, the middle of August or before last week, you drafted, and last year, what was it? Jerick McKinnon was a guy. So I don't know about you, JR. I don't like to draft before week 4 of the preseason.
My biggest money league always waits till after week 4. Now, I am driving to Las Vegas tomorrow for a league I've been in like 10 or 15 years now that I haven't been to the draft in person in 8 years since I moved away from Las Vegas. So I'm in Tucson now, so it's not that far of a drive. I'm going for the first time in 8 years, and I'm the only guy that's been the guy on the phone, so it's going to be so exciting. But
nice.
Yeah, they always draft like this, it's a little early, but the guy that runs the league always sets it up that way for some reason. But, there are pitfalls. There's still injuries that are going to occur, and I agree with you. My other big money league at least waits till, we always draft the Sunday before Labor Day.
Yeah.
That's ideal. But, yeah, funny you mentioned about players getting injured and Andrew Luck retiring because I renamed my team in the league I drafted in last night, and it's No Luck. There is no luck. So all those drafts that took place in the last couple of weeks, there's a disgruntled owner on every one of them because Andrew Luck was expected to do big things this year. And not only does that affect Luck, it affects other players. T.Y. Hilton, Marlon Mack, all Colts players now are going to be downgraded probably.
See, I would think, but, not a professional fantasy football analyst, I would think at least Marlon Mack's value would go up. Because it
possibly. I just think the whole offense will take a hit. But
yeah. Do you think Jacoby Brissett's going to be the quarterback there the whole year?
I don't know who else they could possibly bring in and learn a system this late. If there's one, I completely respect Luck's decision. However, the timing wasn't very good.
Yeah.
So it's a little bit too late to install, get a new quarterback and install the system. So I think it's going to be his job to lose. If they struggle greatly, I'm sure that they'll do him next man up or go acquire someone else. Mm-hmm. And you'd like to think that they might be looking elsewhere already.
I mean, yeah,
but a lot of trade rumors. I saw a trade rumor that Nate Sudfeld, the Eagles' backup, who has a broken wrist right now, might be on the trade block. I think that's rubbish. I don't believe it, but you're going to hear all kinds of stuff. But the best advice we can give you is, listen to the shows, do mock drafts, do your research, go to RotoWire and all the, get some cheat sheets. There's plenty of sources for this stuff. But we're here to break it down for you and maybe walk through some strategies and hopefully help you win your league this year.
Yeah. Now before we get into round strategies, where are you at on holdouts? Because I learned a lesson last year, and I've carried it over to this year. To be on my team, you have to be playing football. I was one of the people last year who took Le'Veon Bell, and it wrecked my season. Truth be told, the league we were in last year together too is a free league, so I kind of was experimenting with setting, some different strategies with setting lineups. But overall, I mean, I think we might both agree. I mean, your first 2 rounds are generally your studs on your team, and just taking that hit last year, it was just hard to recover from it.
Yeah, I avoided Bell last year, and I will certainly avoid Melvin Gordon because now the Elliott situation looks like he'll probably, they're getting closer with some offers and stuff, but there's no way to know for sure. So my advice is to steer clear of those players unless, if you're drafting towards the end of the first round and Elliott's still there, it's still a risk though, because we don't know whether Elliott's going to play in week 1, week 5, week 10, and same with Gordon.
And when
so why take a chance?
He hasn't been playing football, so there's going to be some rust.
And there's going to be a risk no matter what. So if you do take Elliott, then make sure you handcuff him with Tony Pollard. That way at least you'll have the Cowboys running back no matter what. But I generally avoid any risk at all.
Yeah, that's a huge gamble that early. Until he's on a team, Zeke's on my no draft list as high as he's ranked.
I agree. You know what? Let someone else take that risk.
Yeah, because I will say I listen to I'm a Matthew Berry disciple. I also listen, a couple other people, Adam Rank, guys like that. But it's Matthew Berry will tell you one of the fundamental principle of fantasy football is generally mitigating risk every week.
Yep, I couldn't agree more.
Yeah, so it's for me no Zeke, no Melvin Gordon, no AJ Green, no Kareem Hunt. I mean, he's essentially free in drafts anyways. He's not even going any of the mock drafts I did. I don't think I even saw him drafted.
Well, you know what? That's before we get into who we should draft and when we should draft them and draft strategies. That's a good point there. You should probably make yourself a do not draft list.
Yeah.
And all those guys belong on there, in my opinion.
Yeah. Anyone on the pup, anyone that's got you only got 13 weeks. All right. I learned this lesson very on in my fantasy football career. You don't have time to wait.
Agreed.
Every week is one less, you got 13 weeks, 14 depending on your league, but you don't have time to wait. Des Bryant, looking at you, how many roster spots did that guy chew up for me being on the IR, just waiting for him to come back and then either be pedestrian or get injured again? I learned those lessons very on in my fantasy football career.
And another guy that will be on my do not draft list is Josh Gordon.
Yeah,
there is some upside there, but you know what? I'm not going to be the guy that takes that risk because every week could be his final one, giving his past history. So just say no.
Yeah, he's too volatile. Even though he's the only other receiver you have heard of on the Patriots this year.
I know, and it's tempting, but don't drink the Kool-Aid.
Yeah, no, I had him last year. I had maybe in our league, maybe in another league, but he was good for maybe a couple weeks, and then he went away. So, yeah, not worth the risk. So let's talk about strategies. We're gonna kind of walk you through here. We're gonna kind of clump some rounds together. At least give you our opinions of what you should be drafting in these rounds, and just kind of go from there. We're going to start with rounds 1 through 5. Now, I don't know where you are on these picks, JR, but to me, this is where you fill up your wide receivers, your running backs, and your flex.
Absolutely. You got to get a running back in the first 2 rounds. If you pick early in the first round, it's a no-brainer. There's 4 or 5 good candidates, and then there's a little bit of a drop-off. If you're getting the second half of the first round, then your options are a top receiver, maybe even reach on a top tight end like a Kelsey. But if you do that, then your next pick, you've got to go running back. Running backs are going to go fast, and they're at a premium.
Yeah.
There's only so many top-tier ones. So obviously the no-brainers are the Barkleys, the Kamaras, Chubb, Le'Veon Bell, McCaffrey. Of course, McCaffrey gets a big bump up for PPR leagues. And then you got Elliott in there, and I'm not taking Elliott, but somebody will, and that's fine. And don't be that guy. Let somebody else take the risk. And yeah, he might sign and he might play the first game of the year, but that's okay. You can sleep tonight knowing that you don't have to worry about that.
Mm-hmm. The first 2 rounds, I like to take best player available. There's a lot of people that do go your mindset there of running back first, but I like to do the 2 best players available, and then I'll fill out the holes from that. Like my first 4 rounds, I'm filling out my two running backs and my 2 wide receiver slots, and I'll base how I fill them out off of my first 2 picks. But that's me. Plenty of people win their leagues with JR's strategy. I mean, because, like he said, they're at a premium. Receivers pretty deep. Quarterbacks pretty deep. Tight end, not so much. But yeah, running backs, you got to get them early, or it's going to be an uphill battle.
I think there's wide receivers deep enough that you can afford to wait on those. That being said, if you have a late first round pick and all the top tier running backs are taken, and there's a couple guys out there like a Devontae Adams, maybe a Mike Evans that might be worth your late first rounder. But generally, I'm going running back, and I am very, very proactive on tight ends. I do not like being left out of the tight end. There's usually a top 3 or 4 tier of tight ends. I always try to get one of those. It doesn't always work out, but so if I usually have one of those late round picks, I even drafted Kelsey with the 11th pick in a draft the other night, and I rebounded pretty nicely.
I've never been a fan of going tight end before like round 6. Because to me, it just seems like you shoot yourself in the foot with your receivers or your flex. But again,
and looking back, I could have got Zach Ertz in the 3rd round instead of blowing a first round pick on Kelsey. It's just what I was feeling at the moment and who was on the board and who I wanted to get.
But I mean, I'll refute my own argument. Those top tier, I mean, it's the big 3 this year, right? Ertz, Kittle, and Kelsey. I mean, those guys generally put up as much as a top tier receiver or a top tier running back.
That's exactly my thought process is, you know what, those guys are going to produce in a position where, if you don't get one of them, you're going to get like a guy, a hole in your lineup almost. Mm-hmm. Whereas, I've got, 3 wide receivers, because one of the big 3 produced just like a top receiver.
Yeah.
But your strategy is not bad either. There's some good value to be had in the later rounds. There's still some good tight ends with nice high upsides, that can be had in those 6th and 7th rounds if you wait. So everybody has their own methodology here. There's no right or wrong, but it's it's always interesting to see how other people's thought processes are. And like we said earlier, when you're in a league, year after year with the same people, you get to learn everybody's tendencies, and that can affect your picks too. So you're like, well, I know if I don't pick this guy here, Joe's going to take him. Let's just talk about. I want to talk about Todd Gurley. What are your thoughts on Gurley this year? A lot of people are skeptical about his knee, and he's usually used to be a surefire top 5 pick. Now he's going toward 2nd, 3rd round. Is that another person? Is that another player you want to stay away from, or is there value there if you can get him 2nd, 3rd round?
I mean, the draft I'm currently finishing up, he went 20th. So I mean, I keep hearing he's going to be managed this year, simply based on the fact that what about the last month of the season he disappeared, and it was rumored that he was injured. My one reservation with him has always been his durability. When he's healthy, he's the man. But I mean, he does tend to have issues with his knee. But
I mean, he was so dominant in the first half of last year, and he didn't even barely play in the Super Bowl. So that's a red flag there. So what I would say is if you go get him, and there is a point where, if you're drafting 20th and he's still there, it's a pretty tempting proposition. But if you're going to do that, you better jump to handcuff Darrell Henderson, who will be his backup. And that way, something happens, you're covered. The handcuffs can be real important. And if you make up your mind to do that, don't sit and wait on your handcuffs. 6th, 7th round, handcuff those guys, because that those players are going to be targeted by your other guys in your league, and then they'll try to extort a trade value for you.
Yeah, that's when you just go work the waiver wire.
I like to ensure my picks. Anybody that has a suspect like that, it's always good to take your top running back that you put and try to find his handcuff in almost every case. You got a James Conner, you got to get Jalen Samuels. I don't know about getting Kareem Hunt for Chubb, but Tony Pollard for Elliott, certainly, with Elliott being uncertain. I don't think that there's a really good backup on the Giants for Barkley, so you might be just on an island there. But for the obvious ones, and then you got the Chiefs running backs. You got Damian Williams, who looked really good last year. But
I just keep hearing out of Kansas City it's going to be a committee. He's a guy I just want to stay away from.
Well, again, there's a value to be had That league where I drafted Travis Kelce so early, I ended up getting Williams in like late in the third round, so that was value.
Yeah.
But I did handcuff him. I think it was Darwin Thompson as his backup. So when you get guys like that, handcuff them. That way it's like an insurance policy. Better to do that than reach for somebody in the 7th round that's probably not going to be riding your pine most of the year anyway.
Yeah.
Sporgy.
ChristopherMedia.net.
On the Paychex Business Series podcast, Gene Marks talks with business owners and experts about today's top issues, business innovation, and the road to recovery from guests like Rich Rowell of Facebook, Meredith Schmidt of Salesforce, and more. Listen and subscribe at paychex.com/business series.
It's the Divisional Round, and you can follow all the action at betonline.net. On Saturday, LA visits the frozen tundra of Green Bay, while Baltimore and Buffalo face off with their electric third-year quarterbacks. On Sunday, and after winning their first playoff game in 26 years, Cleveland meets last year's champs. In the late game, 2 legendary future Hall of Fame QBs square off as Tampa visits the Big Easy. Check out all the action this week at betonline.net as teams take one step closer to the championship. Always available online or your mobile device. Visit betonline.net today. Bring the game home at betonline.net.
A different future starts with you. That's why GoDaddy does more than help you find a name. You can create, sell, and get found online, so any small business can drive change or build an empire. We need a new generation of thinking. Your way of thinking. Start different at GoDaddy.com.
ChristopherMedia.net.
Sporgy.
So, JR, where do you stand on quarterbacks? What round? What's the earliest you'll take a quarterback?
I usually wait till round 7 through 9 for that. And what I do a lot of times, if I wait till like the 9th round, I'll draft a quarterback in the 9th and then another one in the 10th, because you're probably not going to get a top tier one that late, but you can get 2 medium guys and one of them will work out for you. So what did I do yesterday? I took in successive rounds. I took Russell Wilson. I can't remember who my other guy was. But that way I got 2 guys that are almost even, and they're maybe second tier, but between the 2 of them, one of them's going to work out.
So you are a fan of backups? Because the league we played in last year, that was the first time I tried. I was like, I read a couple strategy things. Like, all right, I'm going to try this year without a backup QB and a backup tight end. Oops. I mean, first was it?
Oh no, I always back people up.
Yeah, week 1, Delaney Walker got injured. That was my tight end. I spent the rest of the season chasing a replacement for him.
So I drafted Baker Mayfield, and then in the next round, Russell Wilson.
Wow.
That was the player that. So I backed those up with that.
You may end up with an embarrassment of riches there.
Could be, but I didn't want to have. When you wait a long time for a quarterback, it's best to grab 2, because a lot of people will say, "Oh, look, this guy just took a quarterback. It's going to be a while till he takes his backup." And then you shock everybody. And it's usually a team that gets really burned by waiting a little too long. But that being said, there's always people that take Patrick Mahomes in the 2nd, 3rd round. Don't be that guy.
Yeah.
Yeah, is he going to probably be he could be like last year, the top quarterback on the board. But there's, you can get the 3rd or 4th best quarterback on the board much later, and you're not going to be sacrificing that many points.
Yeah, the earliest...
Kind of like the difference between that first kicker and that 5th kicker,
Yeah. The earliest I'll ever go is round 6, and you got to be a special QB for me to grab you in round 6.
Yeah, that's a little early for me, but, if Mahomes is there at 6, I'm thinking about it.
Yeah, that's what I say. You got to be Patrick Mahomes. You got to be Aaron Rodgers in his prime. You got to be Tom Brady in like 2012. That's when I'm picking you in like the 5th round.
I got Tom Brady in the 11th round the other night.
Oh, I've had plenty of mock drafts where I've picked him up in like the 15th round.
Yeah, it's amazing. Lack of respect for him.
Everyone forgets he won the Super Bowl last year.
I
know he's 42, but he won the Super Bowl last year.
I hear you. I wouldn't want him to be my number 1 quarterback, but many a times I've drafted him to be my backup, and he has outshined the other quarterback. So he's the timeless, the ageless wonder. You got to wonder when it's finally going to end, but he's shown no signs of it so far, and it doesn't even seem to matter who his position players are, his skill position players.
Yeah. I think he's either going to call it. He's either going to tie Pittsburgh or he's going to get number 8 and then go, all right, we're done. Boston's title town, we're done. But that's asking for 2 more out of the man. It's a tall order for a 42-year-old. But he's a robot, so.
Still getting it done.
Yeah. So, all right, we talked about, your first 5 rounds you want to fill out, your flex, your wide receivers, your running backs, by the ends of, round 6 and 7, if your JR maybe ends around 9, you have your tight ends and your quarterback. After that, it's you fill out your bench.
Fill out that bench. Don't dare go to kicker or defense till the very late rounds.
Yes. For the last time, or probably won't be the last time, but do not draft a kicker or a defense before the last 2 rounds. I just watched someone during this draft.
Year took the Jaguars defense in like the 10th round, and they didn't do much. You're almost better with a defense. Just take a crapshoot on. You always look at the waiver wire. A lot of people stream their defenses. They drop and pick up every week. Oh, who's playing the weakest team this week? Who's playing the Redskins? Yeah, let's take that defense. And there's some merit to that. I've done it before. If you don't have a decent defense, the defense you draft doesn't work out like last year's Jaguars, drop them. Look at who's trending, and then look at the matchups. Some of the big websites like RotoWire even have an article every week about streaming defenses. And they'll have like 4 or 5 options. This defense is playing a real weak offense and a turnover-prone quarterback, and you just kind of, every week, freelance it. It's another strategy.
Yeah.
But as you said, Chris, just wait on those defenses and those kickers. You're wasting a pick, and you're blowing a chance at find some high upside rookies or guys that maybe are under the radar but have some upside. Those are the guys you want to get in those round 10 through 15.
Yeah, your flyers, your sleepers. This is where you want to make those picks. I'm gonna quote Matthew Berry here. The first couple rounds are not a place to get cute. You want to get cute, do them in rounds, 10 through 14.
Because so that's, and also don't forget those handcuffs.
Yeah.
If you've got one of those backs, like if you got a Damian Williams, make sure you get Darwin Thompson. If you've got, if you're that guy that takes Elliott, which we advise against, but if you do, get Tony Pollard. And you probably don't want to wait till the 10th round for Tony Pollard because somebody's probably going to grab him in the 8th or the 9th. So don't take a chance and say, nobody's going to pick him because we've all been there and we've all thought that and we've all been burned on that. So you make a decision to get a handcuff, do it. Go out and get it and don't let anybody beat you to the punch.
Absolutely. And another thing to think about in these rounds as well is if you perhaps picked up a second-tier tight end or quarterback, draft your backups. All right, at this point, you're going to be maybe going. If you're in the second tier in either of those positions, you're just going to be picking from the 3rd tier. So I mean, it's once you get below that first tier, that's where the really special guys are. If you end up with a 2nd or 3rd tier QB or tight end, pick a backup because sometimes this is where a lot of these people surprise you.
Yep, that's just exactly. I agree with you. It's exactly what I do when I draft 2 quarterbacks in a row in rounds 10 and 11 or 11 and 12 because I know I don't have a marquee quarterback. So if I draft 2 that are at the next tier, one of them might pan out for me.
Yeah, think about 3 years ago, if you drafted Dak Prescott in like the 15th round, it worked out well for you.
Sure did.
That was a, what do they call them? That was a value pick.
Yep. Now I'm in a league, my biggest money league. We actually can keep 2 players every year, and wherever you draft that player, you subtract 3, and that's the draft pick you lose for him the following year. So if you can find somebody in the 16th, 17th round, so actually that's a case where people do draft their kickers a little earlier because they want to save that 16 and 17 for a Hail Mary keeper. But I know a guy drafted James Conner in like the 16th round last year. So he gets him for a 13 this year, 10th the following year, the 7th the next year. He's going to have James Conner for like 5 years. The guy that had David Johnson when he went off a few years ago, he still has him. He drafted him in like the 15th round. So if you're in a keeper league, that's kind of a unique rule that we have, but a good rule because it ensures that anybody in the first 3 rounds can't be kept at all, and it rewards people that cash in on a Hail Mary pick. Kind of interesting.
Yeah, that's one thing I've never... I played a baseball keeper league one year, but yeah, dynasties, keepers, those are leagues that I've always heard. I know the concepts. I've never had the opportunity to play in. I generally tend to do what the people I play with, the redraft leagues, I believe they're called. Every season
it's really
you redraft.
This one's pretty cool because it's only 2 players. I've been in other keeper leagues where it's 4 players, and if you don't have keepers, you might as well hang it up because you're at such a disadvantage. But with 2, anybody can still win. But it rewards you for, like I picked Darius Jice last year. He blew his knee out. I used the 18th round last pick on Darius Jice. So I get him for a 15th rounder this year. So if he turns out to be, really good, I'll have him for years to come until he is no longer worth forfeiting the draft pick at the level that he's assigned. So just an interesting take I wanted to share with you.
Yeah, Darius Jice, another example of why you don't draft in the middle of August.
Absolutely. So let's look for some favorite players. Anybody jump out at you this year? I guess we should maybe look for sleepers or maybe unheralded guys that fly under the radar that you're high on. Do you have anybody on your list, or you want me to throw some of mine out?
I know I'm going to regret saying this, but I can't even say the sentence, and I just think it's a reflex of just being beaten down for 40 years. But I think keep an eye on Kerryon Johnson this year of the Detroit Lions.
Yep. Well, it's well known you're a Lions fan, and I'm a Philadelphia Eagles fan, and I'm also high on Miles Sanders. Not only is he an Eagles player, but I also my alma mater, Penn State. So but I'm cautious because I try not to do this with my heart. I try to, really only take Eagles where they belong to be taken, and Penn State players too. So there have been a couple drafts where I really wanted to take Miles, and I'm like, well, he's kind of in a running back by committee in Philadelphia. Jordan Howard is there. I don't think he's going to be like a every down stud workhorse back. I think there's going to be a lot of rotation, so I got to kind of temper my excitement there to reality. But I think with Kerryon Johnson, that's going to be a bell cow. So I think you're looking at something there. The second half of last year, he was pretty impressive.
I'm just looking at him as like that's all the Lions got. Quite honestly, that's solely where mine is coming from. You got the ghost of Marvin Jones. I think
Kenny Galladay's getting some pretty good reviews here.
As I say, I think Babytron might be something. That's his nickname. I keep hearing out of Chicago that David Montgomery, I keep hearing that the Bears love him.
There's a lot of hype, but remember Tariq Cohen's there too. These are guys that you're going to hear a lot about, and you're going to hear a lot of people raving about. But it's one of those where I'd like to see it first before I hear it. So then again, I haven't seen much of the Bears. I haven't seen their workouts. I don't know, but there is a lot of hype around these guys. But proceed cautiously because David Montgomery could be a beast because Jordan Howard's gone now. So, but we don't know. But it's kind of exciting to take players like that. You just take those are the guys you take the 6th, 7th, 8th round. But obviously Montgomery's going much higher than that. He's usually going in the 3rd or 4th. And what happens is people get running back. So many running backs go off the board. People start panicking and pick guys a little higher than they maybe belong. I want to throw out an old veteran that you'll probably laugh at me, but a guy that always seems to produce that never seems to get drafted very high is Robbie Anderson for the Jets. And I've drafted him a couple of my drafts.
No laughing. I can read the numbers. He has been consistent, and he's essentially the lead receiver. Well, not essentially. He's the lead receiver in the Jets. So I mean, most of the time they're throwing the ball, it's going to him.
Yeah, and I think you got Le'Veon Bell there. That'll open up some opportunities for Anderson. Sam Darnold looks like he's got a good future, and certainly another year of experience under his belt. So I would. That's another guy. We were talking about how thin the tight end position is. A lot of people are very high on O.J. Howard this year. A real sleeper that can be had usually pretty late in the draft is Mark Andrews of the Ravens. I saw some great things for him last year. So a lot of these guys are guys that I've seen. I've seen the production, and that's why I believe in them. I'm very cautious about the hype for some of these other guys, like DK Metcalf, who actually is injured right now, but And those guys could be unbelievable talents and have great seasons, but they're question marks to me. So, But that being said, there's a spot in the draft for all these players, but don't go too high too early on them. It's even Miles Sanders, he's going I think a little earlier than he should go, even though I'm a fan and I'm also a realist. Let's see. Guys, anybody you think's overrated? I'm a little bit skeptical of Sony Michel. I think he's injury prone. He's not a real big player. He's explosive, but somebody that I avoid. That Patriots. It's hard to draft Patriots as good as they are, and they always produce. They're always in the playoffs. They're usually in the Super Bowl, but they spread things around so much. There's a lot of mouths to feed. And there's no Gronk there, which was the obvious, Maybe Edelman is probably a guy that I would draft, but I don't know. Sony Michel, I'm not drafting him this year.
Yeah, the New England backfield is never a good choice.
James White, great in PPR. If you're in a PPR league, you might want to consider James White. He catches a lot of balls. Another guy I'm a little skeptical on, and this is a pretty obvious one, T.Y. Hilton. Without Andrew Luck there, he's going to take a hit on production, I believe. Maybe Jacoby Brissett will listen to this podcast and take exception to that, but until I see the proof. Let's see. And Amari Cooper certainly looked much better in a Cowboys uniform than he did in Oakland. Mm-hmm. So we'll see about that. Chris Godwin in Tampa Bay is supposed to be a lot of chatter around.
That is a guy that to me is going, and I even had him last year in a couple of teams. I think he's going too high. He's going in like wide receiver 1 territory in some of these drafts.
All the shows are hyping him up. They're like Adam Humphries is gone now.
They forget about Mike Evans.
Yeah, and Evans is always way up there, but I guess they're saying that this year they're going to be throwing the ball more. There's really not a light to like in that Tampa Bay backfield in terms of running back talent. You got Ronald Jones, who really didn't have a great campaign last year. You got Peyton Barber. It's really hard to get excited about him, except when you're on the goal line. So I guess they're figuring they're going to air it out, and Godwin's going to catch a lot of balls. And it's another Penn State guy, so I like Godwin, but I'm not taking Godwin in the 3rd or 4th round. Come on.
Yeah,
guys are.
Everything I know about fantasy football, I cannot take a team's second wide receiver, in wide receiver 1 territory. I just can't. There's just something in my gut. There's
a lot of good wide receivers like a Robbie Anderson that are number 1 still on the board when you're taking a number 2. Now Calvin Ridley's an interesting subject because he's probably a number 2 to Julio Jones, but I would certainly take him over Godwin.
See, I was a Calvin Ridley owner last year. The problem is I think I heard the statistic. He scored like a third of his points in like the first 5 games. Like Ridley was feast or famine last year. He either gave you a bunch of points or he gave you nothing.
That brings me to another point. I mean, I think we all have players that we've had that we're like, I'm never drafting this guy again. He kills me. And I know we just talked about Mike
John
Evans.
Brown, looking at you.
Well, even Mike Evans, and he's one of the top receivers on the board, and he's a great talent. But I had him as a keeper in that league I told you about for 4 or 5 years in a row, and he either gets hurt or he disappears in certain games. I'm not drafting Mike Evans, and unless he falls to like the 3rd round, and he'll be long gone by then, and that's fine with me. I'm just not doing it again, and it may be unfair, but we all have experience. Most of you listeners, or if you're listening to the show, you probably played fantasy football for years. So I think we all can sympathize with that situation where we have a guy that burned us time and time again, and you're like, never again will I draft this guy.
Yeah.
Sporgy.
ChristopherMedia.net.
It's the Divisional Round, and you can follow all the action at BetOnline.net. On Saturday, LA visits the frozen tundra of Green Bay, while Baltimore and Buffalo face off with their electric third-year quarterbacks. On Sunday, and after winning their first playoff game in 26 years, Cleveland meets last year's champs. In the late game, two legendary future Hall of Fame QBs square off as Tampa visits the Big Easy. Check out all the action this week at BetOnline.net as teams take one step closer to the championship. Always available online or your mobile device. Visit BetOnline.net today. Bring the game home at BetOnline.net.
Of all the streaming services out there, only one is different. Discovery Plus. It's the greatest collection of real-life entertainment on the planet. 55,000 episodes of food, love, true crime, home, from networks like TLC, HGTV, and tons more. Yes! With stars like Chip and Jo, an exclusive new series from 90 Day Fiancé, all in one place. Bam! Discovery Plus. Stream now. Stream what you love.
ChristopherMedia.net.
Sporgy.
Let's talk about teams to stay away from this year. Number one, Miami. Looking at you. Is there anybody worth owning on that team?
Maybe Kalen Ballage, which is a reach.
Yeah. That'd be a late
That
rounder.
would be a late rounder, like my fourth running back 4. But I got another team for that, and it's the Cincinnati Bengals. I have been hearing that their offensive line is atrocious this year, and I am going to be avoiding. And that's another guy that's burned me in the past. Is
Red Rocket.
Red Rocket. Yep, Red. I'm not taking him. I'm not taking Tyler Boyd. Who's, if you're going to draft anybody, it's probably Boyd. AJ Green, I think, has seen better days.
The only person on that team I'm drafting is Joe Mixon.
And I'm even leery of him because with no line, I think that they're going to just stack the box. I don't think Big Red's going to be very effective this year, and I think they're going to be behind and throwing a lot. I can't do it either. I will not have any Bengals on my team, including Mixon.
Another team I think to stay away from, Buffalo Bills.
The only Buffalo Bill I would draft is the Buffalo Bills defense. I actually did that in the draft last night, but there are no skill players that I want any part of, so agreed. A lot of people are talking about Devin Singletary, who's supposed to be the heir apparent to LaShawn McCoy, and I will not be a part of that experiment either. So good call on the Bills.
The only Bill I would even think of drafting, and it would be like the pick before my defense, would be Shady, and that would be just taking a gamble that he's going to have. Because Shady has been wildly inconsistent over his career. He has great years, he has off years. You know, maybe this year will be a great year, and that would be in like the round before my defense. You know, I'm not reaching to get Shady.
Speaking of dinosaurs, the ageless Frank Gore, is he not on the Bills?
He is 55-year-old Frank Gore.
There you go. Gosh, every year I think he's going to retire, and he's back again, and he's actually still half decent. He's just like Rasputin; he will not go away. But love you, Gore, but I won't be drafting you.
You could argue he was serviceable in Miami last year.
So, any other sleepers that you want to bring up? I thought for sure you would bring up T.J. Hawkinson as a dark horse tight end.
I did own him in my college fantasy draft last year, but it's the only two Detroit Lions worth rostering we already talked about. Kenny Golladay and Kerryon Johnson.
Yeah, and I am surprised at how Matthew Stafford has fallen off. He used to always get drafted, and he doesn't get drafted very often anymore. He'll be on the free agent. But, you know, hey, if they start out hot, you can pick him up off waivers probably in most leagues.
I owned him last year. He was hot garbage for me. He's kind of like Tom Brady. He looks a lot better on the field than he does in fantasy as far as the points he puts up.
So, moving on back to that first round, I think the toughest spot to be in is that number 5 pick. Who are you taking with the number 5 pick? Let's assume Barkley, Kamara, Chubb, and Elliott are gone.
CMC but he's generally going at number 3.
Yeah, I should have put him up there. So let's move it to the 6th pick after those guys. Where I'm going with this is that's about where David Johnson is slotted, and I'm scared to death to take David Johnson this year. And I just moved to Arizona, and I went to a Cardinals preseason game, but the Cardinals, I think, are a long, long way away from being a viable team right now.
No faith in Kyler Murray?
Not this year, anyway. Although I would say that the Cardinals' defense is worse than their offense from what I saw in the preseason game. But I don't know. I'm skeptical to take David Johnson, but he's not going to last past the whole first round anywhere.
Yeah.
And it's another one of those cases like, what else do they have? You got Larry Fitzgerald, who is like a fossil now.
Mm-hmm.
Captain Kirk, Christian Kirk. They'll probably be behind a lot in throwing. And you got, Kyler Murray might be an exciting guy to get some points from the running quarterback, but I'd certainly be much more excited to get Jackson with the Ravens.
Lamar?
I'm a big fan of Lamar Jackson. I think he's going to surprise some people this year.
I was able to pick him up.
You can get him in really late usually.
He was my last pick before my defense.
Yeah. And what's not to like? I mean, in worst case scenario, you're at least going to get a bunch of rushing points. Mm-hmm. He stays healthy, and he actually has a pretty good cannon arm. So I'd watch out for him as maybe a sleeper.
What I keep hearing from people is don't expect him to have a great season because of the whole mentality of once people got tape on you. It's a lot easier to play you. I like to think he did well his first few games because no one had seen him yet. All they had was this stuff from college. But we do forget he was also a Heisman winner. So,
but you know what? I'll take him any day over Andy Dalton.
Yep, absolutely. I don't even think Andy Dalton got drafted in our league.
And the fact you took him where you did, that's where you take somebody like that because you never know. He might be a world beater this year, and if he's not, so what? You used, a 14th, 15th round pick on him.
Yeah.
So anybody drafting Nick Foles in any of your leagues, that might be another guy that comes out of nowhere. I don't think he's getting drafted in most leagues.
No, because he plays for the Jags. These are not the Jags of 2 years ago. I'll tell you that.
Well, he can't do any worse than Blake Bortles.
Yeah. I'm on the bet. We might see him in Indianapolis. He's in L.A. now, backing up Jared Goff. I mean, while he is not the greatest, he at least was a starter.
Well, I'm going to just quickly peruse the tight end list here and throw a few names out, see what you think. We all know that it's Kelsey, Kittle, and Ertz are the big ones. Howard and Engram are usually the next tier. Jared Cook is now in New Orleans, coming from Oakland. That could be interesting. He's high on this list, but it's another one where I got to see it first.
Yes, he is too inconsistent. If you look at all of his seasons, wasn't last year his best season?
Yeah,
and
he's
one
a lot
of
of mouths to feed in New Orleans.
Yeah, and Jared Cook is just one of those guys. He'll have a great game, and then he'll have a game where he gives you a 0, literally. He's just he hasn't shown the consistency for me to put him. I don't even think he belongs where he's getting drafted. I think he belongs lower. I just think he's riding off of last year.
Well, then the next tier of tight ends, Vance McDonald, Hunter Henry. I still think Mark Andrews is a good sleeper. Greg Olson's a dinosaur. I had him last year. He's one of those guys that I said never again. I just think he's old and injury prone. He had a great career up until now, but this is the tail end. David Njoku, Kyle Rudolph.
I think Njoku's going lower than he should. Granted, there's more mouths to feed in Cleveland this year, but based on his performance, I just think he lost a few ranks just simply because they have OBJ now in Cleveland.
Yeah, probably. He's not. If you're drafted in David Njoku, you better have a better tight end as your second tight end.
Yeah,
I would go with Delaney Walker over him, and Delaney Walker is usually lasting pretty late. That's another guy that when he's healthy, he's explosive, but he gets hurt a lot. Jimmy Graham, I don't know what to think about him. He's another one I said never again to.
Yeah.
Which is now you know why I took Travis Kelce with the 11th pick in that one round. Now, there's been a lot of tight ends that have burned me over the years.
Yeah, Jimmy Graham.
Don't want to get stuck with a 0 at tight end, and there's just only so many good ones.
Yeah, this is not 2009. It is 2019. Jimmy Graham has seen better days.
Now, if you're really, really desperate, Chris Herndon of the Jets, great talent, but I think he's suspended for the first eight weeks, is it?
Yep.
But, somebody to look, even if you don't draft him, which I wouldn't draft him because that's 8 weeks is a long time, but if you're plugging along and you're getting no production out of your tight end spot and it's about week 6, I'd pick him up and stash him until week 8. Hopefully maybe he can come in and help you for the stretch run. But I'm talking Hail Mary guys here now. Another guy to watch is Dallas Goedert from Philly. I think they're going to use 2 tight ends a lot, and maybe and if certainly anything ever happens to Zach Ertz, Goedert has a world of potential. Not really excited about Austin Hooper or Trey Burton. Jack Doyle now with no Andrew Luck, probably not. So that pretty much runs the whole gamut. And then we talked about Hawkinson, Noah Fant. Those guys are Hail Marys that you could take late in the draft. That's about it for tight end. Don't get caught with nobody. That's all I have to say.
Yeah, and no Gronk this year definitely makes it a lot more interesting at that position.
All right, well, anything else here? Final comments? Hey, enjoy your drafts, everybody. I mean, we do the Beer Nuts podcast too. So any of you craft beer lovers, check us out on that. But one word of advice is when you draft fantasy football, leave those craft beers for the end, because I've made some pretty bonehead moves after having a few pops. So, and I think we've all been at a draft where there's that one guy who just maybe gets a little buzz on and makes some stupid choices. So, you got an hour, maybe 3 hours tops for most drafts. Save the celebrating for when the draft concludes. Then it's time to have a few pops with your buddies.
Yes,
and look at everybody's rosters and see who you think is the favorite.
And let me beseech you, if you can hear my voice, know who you're going to pick when it's time to pick.
Oh, amen.
I hate it's not rocket science. All right? Especially if you're in the first 5 rounds, what are you thinking about?
And if you have an ESPN league, 10, 12 teams, you usually have plenty of time between picks. Use your queue. Go down and you see guys you like, put them in the queue. I usually got 10, 15 guys in the queue at all times. And when my pick comes, I look at the queue, and I already got guys there that I know I want. There's always the same people in every league. It's down to the last 2 seconds when they make their pick. Many times in my league, I drafted last night. My thing came up, and I drafted within 2 seconds.
Yes.
Those are the guys you need. And then, an hour goes by, and you're done.
Yeah.
Sometimes less than an hour. But, yeah, that's a pet peeve of mine, too, that guy that takes the whole 90 seconds or whatever your limit is. Yeah. We have a rule in one of our leagues. If you don't get your pick in on time, then you lose your pick until the next guy picks.
Nice.
And but guys still go down to that last, it's mind-boggling. Do your homework. Use the queue. Use the queue. It's your friend.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it takes me more than a second. By the time it's my turn, I know who I'm picking.
And you know what? We've all had that moment where the guy right in front of you picks the guy you wanted. Okay, that's going to happen. But don't have a guy you want. Have 5 guys you want. That way, if the guy takes that guy you want, you got 4 others. It's not that difficult.
Yeah, and have and if you don't have a list, have a strategy. It sounds like we might draft 2 different ways here, but I always have a strategy. So like you said, if the guy that I want gets picked, great. I got the guy right behind him that I want to get. I don't take more than 5 seconds to make. I had the first pick in this draft. I had 2 picks in a row. 2 seconds for 2 picks. This guy, next. And so many times, watching that clock just wind down to 0. Not rocket science, people.
Another word of advice. If you're drafting on an online service like ESPN, you don't have to go by their list. Make your own list. We've already talked about guys on our do not draft lists. Take those guys and remove them or move them to the bottom before the draft starts. You can tailor that thing to what it should be. And the other thing is, if you're in a league and there's people that don't show up and they're auto drafting, look at the list, because the guys at the top of the all position lists are going to be auto-drafted. So if there's a player there you want, you could at least know that, well, if I don't take this guy, the auto-draft's going to pick it for two picks later. So, be smart about that and use the people that don't show up at the draft is ridiculous to begin with, but it happens. And we all have lives, and some people take this more serious than others. But I had 2 picks in a row auto-drafting, and I used that to my advantage. I'm like, well, I want to take this guy, but I wouldn't take him normally to the next round. But I know the auto-draft's going to pick it for him, so I have to take him now or I'm going to lose him.
Yeah. And then, too, you can always set up to screw the auto-drafter. Let them get Zeke. Let them get Melvin Gordon.
Hey, you got to post, man. You got to post. But yeah. I can remember one year, I forget what happened. I missed a complete draft, and I ended up winning the league. So the auto-drafter sometimes is not so bad.
No, my fantasy baseball league this year, I totally gapped on my draft. And as of right now, I'm 17-3 in first place, the top playoff spot.
So try to tell you not to be that guy, but if you are that guy, take the reins of your team and tweak it, and you can recover.
And set your lineups, people. Nobody likes playing against the guy who never sets his lineup.
Yeah, we actually have one of my leagues, the commissioner will actually call people out for that. They'll say, hey, you have a guy playing that's on a bye week. You must put him in. You must replace. That's not fair to the other people that put their lineup in every week. So, yeah, these are basic things I think everybody knows. But
if you don't want to do it, don't play. It's as simple as that.
Don't be that guy, right?
Yes.
Don't be that guy.
All right. Well, this was fun.
Well, it was fun going through this. I know we just kind of randomly threw some things out. Hopefully you learned something. Maybe some sleepers, maybe some do-not drafts. Watch out for those holdouts. Don't draft those kickers or defenses till the end. Very basic stuff that probably everybody already knows, but can't emphasize it enough.
Or
and don't pick all the guys on your favorite team because it's really tempting to do it because you're watching the games and you want to root for your guys. And it's okay to draft them, but draft them where they belong to be drafted. Don't draft a guy 3 rounds early just because you're an Eagles or a Lions fan.
Because also too bye weeks will be fun for you, and you have to draft an entirely new team for your.
I'll tell you the hardest draft pick for me as a Philadelphia Eagles fan is drafting a Cowboys player. But I did have Zeke last year. I mean, you have to sometimes bite the bullet, and this is fantasy. This is not reality. So you want to win, make the right call, and put your heart to the side. Take the emotion out of it.
Yeah.
Be a Mr. Spock and let logic dictate.
Yes. Keep in mind, people, it's a game of points. Never forget that, and we'll get into that in future weeks here.
So Chris and I will be in the Sporgy League, and looking forward to returning that, and we'll be able to, in future episodes, tell us about the adventures. And looking forward to the season, all 10 leagues.
Yeah. Well, I also have another league that I rustled up. People from the Fantasy Hacks League, if you've heard of the Fantasy Life app, check it out. I'm not involved in any way. They're not paying us to say this, paying me to say this. But it's a community of people that they're all into they're in all fantasy sports, but I mean they make their bones on football. I mean the alerts from this app are insane. A lot of times they scoop the sports networks with who's starting, who's sitting, who's injured, all that stuff. And I just want to give I was able to go on into this app, go into a forum, go, hey, I'm starting up a podcast about fantasy football. I'm looking to rustle up some people for a league. I posted it at noon. By the time I sat down for dinner at home at 6 p.m., the league was filled. So we'll have a couple leagues to talk about this, when we do this show. So
awesome.
Hello to the Fantasy Hacks League. I look forward to doing mediocre against all of you.
And I will be driving to Las Vegas to draft in person in the Las Vegas Fantasy Football League.
I'm looking forward to next week. Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. I have a draft every day. It's going to be awesome.
So enjoy those drafts, but remember, don't enjoy those draft beers till after your drafts. And we'll be back at you next week.
Yes, we will have Week 1 preview. Oh man, I've been waiting since first week of February to say that.
It's bring tingles down my spine just thinking that we're this close to the NFL season beginning.
Awesome.
Nothing like it.
All right. Well, we thank you for listening, and we'll catch you next week.
Thank you for visiting ChristopherMedia.net.
It's the Divisional Round, and you can follow all the action at BetOnline.net. On Saturday, LA visits the frozen tundra of Green Bay, while Baltimore and Buffalo face off with their electric third-year quarterbacks. On Sunday, and after winning their first playoff game in 26 years, Cleveland meets last year's champs. In the late game, two legendary future Hall of Fame QBs square off as Tampa visits the Big Easy. Check out all the action this week at BetOnline.net as teams take one step closer to the championship. Always available online or your mobile device. Visit BetOnline.net today. Bring the game home at BetOnline.net.
A different future starts with you. That's why GoDaddy does more than help you find a name. You can create, sell, and get found online, so any small business can drive change or build an empire. Because old ideas aren't cutting it anymore. This new year, we need a new generation of thinking, your way of thinking. So whatever you have in mind that will help make a different future, find everything you need to get started at GoDaddy.com. Because the future isn't decided yet. It's still ours to win. Start different at GoDaddy.com.
ChristopherMedia.net.
If you like this show, please tell a friend. Please make sure to rate and comment on all your favorite Christopher Media shows. Please follow us on Twitter and like and share us on Facebook. You can subscribe to all ChristopherMedia.net shows for free on ChristopherMedia.net. Thank you for listening, and thank you for visiting ChristopherMedia.net.
Thank you for visiting ChristopherMedia.net.